Hey, this is your favorite CPA, Ray the CPA. I'm coming at you to give you the Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Relief Loan update. So, there is no update to the Small Business Administration's guidance on what has to happen for you to apply to the Paycheck Protection Program round two. So, let's back up a little bit. First things first, I want to say what I'm speaking about is the new spending bill that was passed in late December. That's now going to affect, and what it did was it reopened the Paycheck Protection Program, which had previously ended in August. Now, when the original Paycheck Protection Program went out, it lacked certain clarifications where this bill more clarifies the process for the Paycheck Protection Program round two. It also has a couple of tweaks that have made this iteration of the loan more friendly to smaller businesses, chambers of commerce, nonprofits, and even venues, theater venues, and such that have been closed. Now, what I wanted to correct in this video was the idea of taxability or the tax effects of deductions. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that previous to this new bill being passed, what would happen is the loan proceeds themselves were non-taxable. They shouldn't ever be. But the IRS had announced that the expenses that you paid off with the Paycheck Protection Program, those expenses weren't deductible. Let's go through an example. So if you have $10,000 of revenue and you have $5,000 of expenses as a small business or an entrepreneur, you then typically you would then be able to use that $5,000 to reduce your taxable income. That's always the name of the game. We aren't thieves here, we aren't dishonest, but you want to reduce your taxable income, then you pay taxes on that income. Now, before the PPP, businesses would basically be able to reduce their taxable income by using expenses as deductions. So, Ray Corp spends $10,000 or earns $10,000 in income. Ray Corp has to spend $5,000 in taxes, or pardon me, $5,000 in reasonable business expenses. I can then subtract that 5 from the original 10, and I'm only going to be taxed on $10,000. Or before this last spending bill was passed, the $1.4 trillion spending bill, which includes the new $900 billion. I can't remember the name of it, but basically it's the new addition to the CARES Act, essentially CARES Act 2.0. But before this last bill was passed in late December, the IRS had ruled that if you have qualified expenses, from our example, the $5,000, but you use the Paycheck Protection Program to pay for that $5,000, well, you couldn't use it to lower your expenses. So now you've got $10,000 in income, and you can't reduce it down with the $5,000 of allowable expenses. Let's put that aside. That's old stuff. Okay, why are you bringing up old stuff, Ray? Because the new stuff just happened. So, as of I think December 27th, now the deal is you can. So basically, you receive the Paycheck Protection Program loan, let's say for $5,000. You make $10,000. You have $5,000 of applicable expenses that are basically allowable or forgivable under the Paycheck Protection Program. That $5,000 in business expenses can then be used to reduce your taxable income. So the IRS, under the behest of Congress, has enacted the spirit of that act. The spirit is to not hurt you. The spirit was to give you a break during COVID. But I think because in March not me, but Congress was releasing these acts so fast, all the incidentals didn't really get accounted for. So for example, there's always a problem in these kind of programs with access, right? So the way that the act was written, it was for small businesses, but people forget that a small business is a business that has less than 500 employees and under 7.5 million in revenue. That can still be a pretty, well, depending on industry. There are some industries where the revenue number is much higher, but for the most part, if you have a small business like that and you have a relationship with a local bank, you're gonna get the money first. This is why we saw large companies like, let's say, Ruth's Chris as a restaurant get the PPP, and you're thinking, well, why would they get the PPP? Because technically they're a small business at each location, but they're a major corporation at the top level. So the way it was written allowed for that. That was legal. And if you have a relationship with your bank is going to give out loans that are the safest for the bank first. So the new iteration, Paycheck Protection Program Part 2, that whole spending at that $908 billion, all of that is designed to actually get what we think of as smaller businesses, mom and pop stores, restaurants, get more. So just something to think about. But as of today, I haven't gone in too far into depth, because if you look at the Small Business Administration's website, there's not a lot of increased. They haven't designed instruction for us on how to proceed. There'll most likely be a new application. There's also a new simplified application for everybody under 150,000. That was 50,000. Now it's 150. So just, you have to be aware of that. So what they've done, they being Congress, have issued this act. Then the Small Business Administration has a certain number of days. I don't know if it was 6 or 10. Doesn't really matter. When the guidance comes out, we'll deal with it. But they have a certain amount of time to come out with explicit guidance to help people, lenders mostly, to administer these loans, also to forgive the other loans. There are certain questions and clarifications revolving around, if you've applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, the original round 1, does that preclude you from round 2? No, not necessarily. Not at all, actually. You can apply if you can show further business need. If you are forgiven, does that affect? No. If you were forgiven, place that aside. It's time to reapply. EIDL, the portal is open, but again, until we have guidance, we don't really know what to do. But what I would suggest that you do is your records for 2020, your documents, your payroll records, your monthly bills, have those set aside. 2, make sure that you have revenue from 2019 compared to 2020 by quarter, because there's going to be a loss of revenue test. I'll go into in another video, but there'll be a loss of revenue test and you'll need that. So that's how you prepare. But that's the update. Thank you so much. Bang, bang. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I would subscribe, because the videos are going to be coming hot and heavy. So subscribe, like. If somebody that you know needs this kind of information or needs a CPA, let me know. All right, Ray the CPA out. Thanks so much, guys. Bang, bang.